What's up everyone? Welcome back to the channel. In our previous video, we have mastered Postman collections that helps us organize all our API requests. But what exactly are you doing when you send a request? You are performing an HTTP method. Today we are diving deep into the 4 HTTP methods that are commonly used in a request: the get, post, put, and delete. So understanding these is absolutely fundamental to interacting with any API, and I will show you how to use each one effectively in Postman. So what are HTTP methods? They are called HTTP. And what are these? So we need to understand first. They are the verbs or the actions of your request. When you send an API request, what action are you trying to perform on a specific thing, on a specific product or a specific user? For example, you have a user here. Do you want to delete this user or update this user? Accordingly, based on what you want to do, you send the appropriate request. So these methods are standardized actions that are used to interact with resources on a server. So in RESTful APIs, they directly map to CRUD operation. So you can see the operations such as the 4 operations: create, read, update, delete. So let's break down the most common ones. The first one is the get. Get is for retrieving data. It is like reading the information, the data from a server. So it should only fetch and never modify it. It does not modify the data. And it's idempotent. That means running the same get many times. If you hit the send button and do the get request on the same resource again and again, it has no effects on the server. It yields the same result, so you get the same response every time. And the data in the URL are the parameters. For example, I have the 1. If I change it to 2, I will get the information for user number 2, ID 2, the title 2, and so on. If I say 20, so that's how you vary the parameter. And another thing is, another security note here is, do not include any sensitive or API keys directly in the URL. For example, you cannot enter your password and send it in the URL as a parameter. Yeah, so that's one thing you need to keep a note, because they are logged and cached. And let's go and do a demo. So I have the collection here, and you can add a new request, and it always defaults to get request, and you can select your URL, and the action here you can see is set to get. You can set it to anything, but here we are going to showing you the demo for the get method. So ensure that drop down get is selected from the drop down, and put the URL and then hit the send request, and you should see a 200 response. That means the request is successful and the server has responded, and we get the response. So this is the data that is read from the server. That's the get, the reading the data from the server and then returning in the response. So that's the data on the body. The data and the response. And some of the this is what the get does. It just simply reads the data from the server. So moving on to the next action, HTTP method, is post. So I'm going to change it to post. And post, what it does is sends data. It posts the data to the server. So if you, unlike get, if you send this post request, hit the send button with the post HTTP method, it is not idempotent, meaning each time you hit the post, it's going to create a new resource or a new product or user or customer on the server. So we need to be very careful. It is not like get. You can hit several times and get the same information in the response. Post creates a new one every time you send a request. and depending on certain constraints. If you are trying to create a user with the same user ID, you might get a unique constraint on the database, but the post always is not idempotent. So some of the common use cases we use the post HTTP method is for submitting forms, uploading files, creating new user accounts, new customers, adding new products. So let's go and see how a post request works. So you create a new request just like this, and you get the get as the default, change it to post, and I'm going to use one of the demo post URL here. So copy the URL and paste the URL here, and the post request requires a content in the body, the content that you want to send it to the server. So you need to select the raw button here, which is the raw. There are two options, raw, and there are other options, but I'm going to select raw, and then from the drop down select the JSON, because that is the format of the data, the JSON data. The data is in JSON format. So I have an example data in JSON format. So I will post it here, and you can see the JSON format here, name, value, body, user ID 1, and header is optional if you want to provide any, but it's a good practice. So header always has a default content type. Since we selected the JSON, Postman has this application/JSON, that is a content type. This content type tells the server what kind of data you are sending. So as we have seen here, application/JSON for the content type. That means we are sending the content in the post request body in the form of a JSON format. So that's what it means. So all you need to do is, everything is done, you click the send button, and in post observe the response. In get we get the response as 200 OK. That means the read was successful and we got a response. But in case of post, I'm going to save it so it's get updated to post. So the response in the case of post is 201 created, because it's a create. You have created a new user here, so the response is 201 for post response, and the response body will usually return the information, that is the newly created resource. In this case, the newly returned resources, the new resources user ID, and the user ID assigned by the server. You can see here that 101. We gave the user ID, user information, and the user information is sent back to us, and the user ID is assigned to this by the server. When I hit send button for the post request, we saw the response coming back as the same information as this request body, but it depends on your application. Your application may not send the entire request back in the response. You might simply get an ID and maybe a status success or status rejected. So this depends on your application, but you can see here, when your request is successful, you can see the status is a new resource was created successfully. A resource means anything. You might be creating a user or a customer or a product or anything that you create. So 201 created is the response code for a successful post response. So there you go. You have successfully saw the demo for the post HTTP, and the next demo I am going to show, next HTTP method is the put request. So let's go ahead and, so what is this put? Put is all about updating or replacing an existing resource. Let's say you created this resource and you want to update the body, or you want to update everything, all of this information for this user. So to update or to replace the existing resource, you can use that. So let's go and see, and let's go and understand this by an example put request. So click on this and add a request, change it to put, and I have a good example here where you can simply put the URL, and let me get the URL for this for the demo. So URL and the headers, by default Postman always sets this as the once you select this raw and JSON, the header is automatically added. Content length is the length of the body, and let's see, so you can see here it says hide auto-generated headers. So the body is what you want the content to be updated. So in the body we should post the content. Here I am trying to, this is a post update request, and I'm going to update the user ID, the ID1, the user ID, the body, and the title, the new information that I am going to send. So that will replace the information for this user. So this put request is basically what it's doing is sending this information to the server. So the server, the application will receive this request and see that it is an update request, put HTTP method API request, so it's an update. So it is going to update the request, update the user information with this new information. So let me click the send button, and you can see for put request the status response, the request successful request response code, HTTP response code is API response is 200 OK. That means it's successfully processed, and you can see the response body returning the same information. Let me update it in. So this is you can send this request many times with different information, so it's going to update it. So you can see I'm going to with the new information, and you can see the information is here confirming that the request is successful. The status code is 200 OK. So that is how the put request works here. So that is the demo for that, and you can see the header section is all the same. So the body is the same, the JSON format, the information, and you can see the Postman adding the content type application JSON for you. So the next HTTP method that we are going to see is the delete. So what is this delete does is this method is used to remove or delete a specific resource from server. So usually the resource to be deleted is in the URL. So let's see how that it works. So here is the new request. Change this to HTTP method to delete, and I'm going to take an example URL here, and this is the post, and you can see which post you want to delete. Here we are going to try to delete the post with ID 1. So all you need to do is, you don't need any body or anything. You can leave that empty. Just so now you have the URL, the ID of the resource you want to delete, and click the send request. So you get an empty response. You might get a different response based on depending on how your application is configured to send the response for the delete method. But this request here, you can see the request is successful. So the server has accepted and processed the delete operation. So if you try to do a get request on this ID, you might not get any request successful response because the resource have been deleted. You might get an empty body or something like that. And there you have it, guys. You have just explored the delete, get, post, put. These are the most commonly used ones. The other ones are, I will cover it in a separate video. These are not used that often. So it says even so these are the 4 important ones, and we saw how to implement each of them effectively in Postman. So understanding this is very important. So get is reading the data from the server, post is creating a new resource, put is updating the resource, and delete is deleting a resource. So it's a CRUD operation that corresponds to the database: update, select, delete, insert. So you can see these verbs are critical and you should understand them correctly. And now you have the fundamental tools to read, create, update, and delete data through API requests. So in the next video, we are going to dive deeper into the Postman request body that we saw in a few minutes earlier, where we send the information. So in the next video, we will dive deeper into sending JSON from data and files. Here we are posting raw text data. So in the next video, we will see how different ways to package this data, package this, and send the data with your post and put request. So if this video helped you grasp HTTP methods, please smash that like button, subscribe for more in-depth Postman tutorials, and click on the complete Postman Tutorial Series playlist right here to continue your learning journey. So see you in the next one. Thank you.